Morning, everybody. Welcome to the CO visit. Colin here. And of course, my trusty coffee. Mm. Well, thank you for clicking on this video. Appreciate everybody being here. We're getting close to Christmas. Today is Sunday, and the date, I gotta check here again, I can't see. ¿Qué día hoy, amor? 22, 22nd, December 22nd. Probably saw the title of the video. I talk about that subject, CSA, child sexual abuse. I'm going to call it what it is. And this comes from the state of Pennsylvania. Little update. Some of these were from the most recent updates on the Philadelphia District Attorneys or Attorney General's website. It was from October and November 2024. So just two months ago, 1 month ago. There was a list of people that indictments were brought against. So we have David Baloza, who's an elder in a congregation, had over a dozen victims going back to the early 90s. Errol William Hall, Sean Sheffer, Terry Booth, Luis Manuel Ayala Velasquez, and in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, Norman Aviles Garriga, also an elder. So out of that list, they didn't explain in detail every single one of them, but more notably with David Baloza, was an elder, and Aviles Garriga, also an elder. So there's at least two elders out of that group. The other ones might be just rank and file. I don't know. It doesn't say. They don't go into detail. The charges against these men range from children that were as young as 4 years old to a developmentally disabled victim, and others that were between the ages of 11 to 13 years old. So there's a whole range of victims here. And it's interesting how they mention specifically in the case of David Baloza and Aviles Garriga, who were elders, that they had in multiple congregations taken advantage of their position of authority to be with minors. And this is the common thread we see in all of these different situations. Elders are in a position of authority in the congregation as clergy, and they have access to minor children. The parents have trust with the elders. And when you're born in, you see the elders as a position of trust. You have to look to them. You have to look for them because you're taught that they're the ones guiding the congregation. They're shepherding the flock. That's why their elder manual is called Shepherd the Flock of God. They're supposed to be like Jesus. They're supposed to shepherd the congregation. They're supposed to show love and compassion and all these things. So you look to them as not only a position of authority, but they are the ones who are to dispense this love and understanding and compassion and help and whatever. So in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, in the case of Norman Aviles Garriga. He was sentenced to, says, between 11.5 and 23 years. I don't know why. That's what it says in the information. You can read it yourself. Maybe somebody out there with some more legal expertise than me, which I have basically none. I don't know. I mean, how it can be 11.5 and 23. I mean, which one is it? I don't know. Maybe there's some other factors that could raise that up more if more information comes out, I guess. But in both cases, both this gentleman and David Baloza are already in their mid 60s. Okay, so being at that age, and then they're going to prison. They're going to prison. It's going to be a hard time. And you put, let's say, minimum here 12 years on. You're talking about they're going to be into their mid to upper 70s if they ever get out, if they survive, barring any getting killed in prison, because if they're chomos, you automatically go into the federal prison system and you have a green light put on you. Someone's going to go off on you. Even in prisons, the COs, which are the correctional officers, they don't look very well on chomos. If you don't know that term, that's child molesters. That's prison terminology, chomos. So both of these gentlemen, and all of these that I read from the list, they're all now they're all in their 50s and above. So one of the interesting things that is said here is that at least two of the victims had gone to the elders. None. Let me go back and read that again. At least two victims had gone to the elders, and none, nada, niet, were relayed to the police. This is consistent all over the world because that's exactly what the organization teaches or taught, especially at that time. That was the golden age, the 70s, 80s, 90s. That's when all this stuff came up, the 2-witness rule and all this stuff. And if it's in the, no, I haven't read, disclaimer here, because I haven't looked up the most recent Shepherd the Flock of God manual, because they're changing it every few months. But the ones I looked up before that were as recent as the mid 2000s still had the order that when somebody came to the elders with allegations of sexual abuse, the first thing they were to do is call the legal department in New York. The first thing they do. Now, there are active Jehovah's Witnesses, of course, because the Jehovah's Witness organization always blames the victim. It's always the victim's fault. Where were the parents? Why didn't the parents do this? Why didn't the parents report it? And this and that. Well, some of them didn't know because the children were afraid, or whatever reason, which is normal. They're victims. Or they themselves, because they're brainwashed and indoctrinated and taught to not disturb the peace of the congregation and don't bring reproach upon Jehovah's name, they sweep it under the rug. And so they say, well, it should be the parents. And then it says in the book, in the manual, that when it's brought to the attention of the elders, they will tell the parents and then leave it to the parents too. And you see, guys, that's bullshit. I need to get a bell. I'm going to get one of those little bells. I'm going to add that to my videos now. And when I call out bullshit, I'm going to start hitting the bell. And I'll tell you why that's bullshit. From the perspective of a rescatista, a first responder, a rescuer, the first rule of a first responder or a rescuer is that the victim does not make decisions. A victim does not make decisions. A sick person, an injured person, they are not the ones that make decisions. You are the one in control. You are the one in a position of authority. You are the one that has training. You evaluate the situation and you make a decision, not the victim. There are many cases when, for example, people have an accident, they have something happen, and the person's in shock. The first responder comes and they can, you ask person, how are you feeling? And this is not, you can see, I mean, you're evaluating the situation. You can see that person's not okay, right? But you're trying to get them to talk. You're trying to get them to be aware. You don't want them to go to sleep or anything like that. You want to keep them talking. And so you're asking them, how are you doing, buddy? How do you feel? What's going on? Are you okay? You're doing good. And there's many times you can have a person after an accident come out of a car or be sitting there on a curb and they could be missing a limb. They could have an arm, a leg, a foot dangling off by a tendon. And they'll stand up and say, no, I'm okay. I'm okay. They take 2 steps, boom, they go down. When people are injured, they never want to get help. They never want to go to the hospital. No, I'm going to be okay. No, you're not okay. We're going to the hospital. Okay? So the same thing with sexual abuse victims that are minors, that are children. They're scared. They've been in every single case. They've been threatened. They feel vulnerable because this is a person of authority in the congregation. They're going to get in trouble if something's going to happen to me. You cannot expect them to make decisions. And for the people that say, well, because like it says in the manual, when the elders learn about this, then they should tell the parents, and it's up to the parents what they do. So they wash their hands of it, right? They wash their hands of it. No, that's not what should happen. That should never happen. Because imagine if you're a first responder and you come upon a scene or you get called to a scene, just like elders might get called to the Kingdom Hall for a situation, and you see somebody who's either sick or injured or whatever the case might be, or in a mental state that's not safe. This person needs imminent intervention. Can you imagine if a first responder saying, well, you know what? I can see the person, they're bleeding, they're laying there, or whatever the case might be. I'll call the parents, and then I'll just wait for them to show up. I sit here with my arms crossed. And then when they get here, they can decide whether they take them to the hospital or not. Can you imagine that? It's absurd. It's absurd. Jehovah's Witnesses, elders that are out there, you are the first responders. You are the first responders. You are in positions of authority to help. It doesn't matter what your manual says. It doesn't matter what the legal department says. You have to start being men. Stop being cowards, because that's what elders are, cowards. When somebody comes to you with an allegation of sexual abuse, you pick up the phone right there, you call the police, and then you hand the parents or the child, whatever it is, over to them. You get the proper authorities involved immediately. Immediately. It's not your place to handle anything. When there's a victim, you can't leave it to the parents, because we're dealing with victims. And the whole issue is, if they come to you, Now, if they never told you, that's another situation. If I don't know, well, obviously I can't do anything about it. If they went to the parents in first instance and the parents decided to not do anything, that's a different story. And then maybe the children later on, when they get older, they decide to go to the authorities. So be it. You can't do anything about that. But what I'm talking about is whether it's the parents or whether it's the child itself that comes to you, now it is your responsibility. You are now tasked to act upon that. You cannot throw it back into their hands and say, oh, yeah, we understand. Well, go ahead and call the authorities. No, you call the authorities. And if that happened in every single instance, this would not be happening. Simple as that. Don't wash your hands of it. Don't play it off because of a legal loophole, but morally and before God, you are not off the hook. You know what the right thing is to do. You know what the right thing is to do. It's like a phrase that says, everybody. Nobody can feign ignorance here or dementia. Everybody, without fail, without exception, everybody knows what the right thing is to do. Whether they do it or not, that's another story. Elders, overseers, you get wind of sexual abuse in your congregation, pick up the phone and call the authorities. Call the Attorney General's office, call Child Protection Services, call the police, call somebody. And you hand it over. You're not going to do it what? Because you're afraid of losing a position? Losing what? Being an elder? Are you getting paid? Are you getting some benefit out of it? Fuck that. Let them remove you. Let them do whatever. Document it. Sue the organization after that. Somebody's got to stand up and start changing this because we're talking about children here, people, and these are not isolated cases. It's going on all over the United States. It's going on all over the world. I know at least one case of child sexual abuse that was going on here in Honduras from a missionary. This is going on all over the world. We saw what happened in Australia. We've seen cases now from several states in the United States. Montana, now Pennsylvania, and there's other cases. Not all of them get as much coverage as this one, but it is happening. Because pedophiles don't have an economic class. They don't obey social classes, nationalities, ethnicities. It's like drug addiction because it is an addiction. These are sick people who cannot control themselves. There is no cure for this. The only way to control these people is to have them isolated and in no contact at any moment with minor children. And religious organizations afford them perfect opportunities to be in contact. It's like being in a candy store. You're surrounded. And not only that, you're in an organization, a religious organization, whose doctrines favor keeping things quiet, sweeping it under the rug. Because we'll handle it ourselves here internally. Don't let it get out. Because that's what the most important thing is. How does it reflect on the brand? How does it make Jehovah's name look? Because you know what, guys? Remember, this is a business. It's a corporation. Marketing and branding are very important. Doesn't look good when you got sexual abuse cases getting out there, because that was only the Catholic Church, right? Only priests did that. And the Watchtower gave it to him and gave it to him and gave it to him for years and years and years, decades. And all along, this was going on right within their walls as well. Oh, the hypocrisy. Watchtower, governing body. And you know what? This even happened right in Bethel, in the Brooklyn Bethel headquarters, when John Barr was still alive, and the what's his name, the German Herr, I'm forgetting his name now. I have a mental blank. When he was a recent new king on the governing body, when there was a young lady, when they went out to Bethel. This was on another channel, guys. We'll have to look up that information. You can look it up as well, because it was common that certain people would get invited to go out to Bethel because they had a certain knowledge, plumbing or whatever. They could go out there and work and volunteer. So this family went out there, and the father and the mother, who were at Bethel drinking, doing all this stuff in their room, and he would abuse her. He would abuse the little girl, and she went to John Barr. Gerrit Lesch. Herr Lesch. Uns ja. Heil Lesch. And Flegel. Herr Flegel. And John Barr, you don't know who John Barr is. He was a Scottish immigrant, became one of the members of the governing body, and he had a very, very, very particular, very soft voice. He was kind of like John Hammond from Jurassic Park, white hair and very nice, and he was the narrator. If you remember this, some of you from the old school, from way back, you'll remember this. The brown case with yellow cassettes and golden writing on the outside of My Book of Bible Stories. The cassettes, he was the narrator. My Book of Bible Stories. Remember that? Chapter 1. He had a little Scottish accent. And John Barr told her to just trust in Jehovah. Just let it be. Don't disrupt the peace at Bethel. That's what he told her. And this is the guy, mind you, who was narrating children's stories. That's why back on my former channel, I made a video called My Book of Bible Horrors. And I talked about this situation in more detail. Gerrit Lesch and the late John Barr covered up CSA in Bethel. They knew about it. So that's what's going on, guys. That's what's going on. This is the real deal here. People need to start speaking up. And I'm talking about elders. You're the ones that are in positions of authority. Victims come to you. You must make a decision. Not them. You don't throw the ball back in their court. Grow a pair. Man up. Pick up a phone. And do what you have to do. Thanks for watching this session of the CO Visit, guys. I really appreciate it. Hope everyone has a good Sunday. And there'll be more to come. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. It won't cost you a thing. See you in the next one.